was dominated by white body shapes, face shapes, nose shapes, as good as those people. And so I wasn't really thinking about, what stories am I telling? I was thinking about how can I be better? And I was comparing my art to other people's art. And so for a while there, all I was caring about was, does this look like it could go inside of one of these Art of Disney books? Or does this look like it could go inside of like a little golden book or something like that? And I wasn't really thinking about the viewership, any readers, or myself. So it was an active choice of mine to make work that featured Black children, particularly Black girls.
Yeah, okay. All right. Sure, if you say so. I mean, I just remember your Society 6 page, and it's just like it was all like little Black girls and stuff like that. Your films were always, I mean, my favorite film that you did was the one about your dad and his
Yeah.
friend.
Hmm.
Like I always felt like your work was really quite Black, super
Yeah.
Black.
My drawings weren't. And
Yeah.
I remember feeling like, well, I know someone at CalArts was like, she only makes work about being Black. And I was like, are you kidding me? I had to
Man,
learn how to be comfortable with expressing my Blackness. So for you to have come at me after like 4 days, like, bro, sit down.
yeah.
You don't know me.
See, that's why you have to. I think it's really important, especially in a place like Cal Arts, to like, um, sort of like immediately come in there and be like, "Yo, this is who I am. This is how I'm gonna hold myself." Like I come. I mean, there's a reason why I rock a big afro and I have an afro pick now. Is because, and even as I go on job interviews. I'm a teacher, and I go on job interviews, and I'll talk about it. I'll be like, well, this is what white privilege is. This is the problem with police brutality. This is the issues that we have in this world, and like, you should hire me because I'll help you deal with it. Um, but like, if you don't come in like that, then you do have to like deal with all that stuff. Can I swear on this? It's a children's book
I
podcast.
mean, it's the adult hour. We've passed the adult hour. I don't know. I don't care,
I don't know. Does
honestly.
anybody have children that are
I
listening?
guess we'll just be nice and
I guess.
kid friendly just in case.
Okay.
Um,
But yeah, I don't know. Like when I was at CalArts, no one ever came at me like that. No one was ever like, Quest only makes stuff about Black people. And I think it was
yeah.
because I'm also like 8 inches taller than you, and my voice is a lot bassier than yours, so that might help too. I'm an
I mean,
intimidating.
honestly, it's all a part of it. I mean, I
Mm.
know. Yeah. Anywho, we
Yeah.
came here to talk about little leaders, but
Let's talk about little
I think
leaders,
it's
bro.
important to know that a lot of this stuff is going through our minds when we're making content, we're making work. Uh, and honestly, one thing I learned about, approaching art is that everything is important and everything's intentional. And that may come with like, I'm saying that in kind of a snide way, but everything is intentional. And when you make content for children, everything should be intentional.
Mhm.
So a few years ago, I rarely tell this story in this exact way, to like soften the blow, but I will start at the very beginning, which was once I really started getting into illustration, I stopped looking for jobs in other places and applying for day jobs. I moved home for real to small town only Virginia to live with my parents and try to become an illustrator. The little bit of money I was making was coming from doing commissions, and I decided that, if I'm going to try to do this, I'm really going to look at children's picture books and figure out how to get into the publishing industry. Um, and I did that through joining SCBWY. I submitted my artwork to one of their challenges, and it got seen by an art director, and they reached out to me. So I did a little drawing. You guys may have seen it, of a girl carrying a stack of books, and she's walking sideways. Art director saw that and asked me if I would illustrate a book, and that was this one, Festival of Colors. So a few weeks into really trying to become an illustrator, someone already offered me a deal, and I was like, whoa, I did not expect that to happen. So I really had to jump in, with both feet. at the same time. So that was the summer of 2016. And so I was like, yeah, okay, this is it. This is validation that children's picture books may be the thing. And then in October, I went to an SCBWI conference in Virginia, and that's where I met my agent, actually. I gave her a sample of my work, and she ended up reaching out to me to ask me if I wanted representation, which is like incredible and so flattering and pretty rare. Usually you have to query and query and query agents. That's writing a letter to these agents to hopefully get representation. Where was the place that I submitted the art? So it was through the Organized Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, and they had these monthly competitions where you can, you know, if you win, you get your or something like that, so that more people can see it. So that was October of 2016. I got an agent, and then in November 2016, Donald Trump was elected president. And so right after that, I was just feeling like my work was really exciting, but also like, what is life? What are we doing? What does any of that? What does any of this mean now? And I kind of came to the realization pretty quickly that, like, you know, we're still out here making content. I want to make work that shows people that, you know, people of color are still here, that, you know, that, you know, we can still form community through our art, through our stories. And around that time, I'd created this little character with their eyes closed, and I just used it as a kind of a model to put little outfits on. Fast forward a couple of months. So January, he is inaugurated, I think on January 19th. And a few days later, February started, and I thought, okay, it's Black History Month. How can I approach Black History Month differently now? How can I do something to combat this evil white man? How about some amazing Black women? So I decided, okay, every day for the month of February, I'm going to draw a character. I'm going to draw a person of color. I'm going to draw a Black woman, teach myself a little bit about this person, post the drawing, and then, you know, use it as a way to educate myself and kind of combat how, like, stale and repetitive Black History Month had always been. At least for me, I felt like I was always hearing the same stories over and over and over again, kind of repeated, and just like one small sliver of the story, because like every year all we would hear about is Martin Luther King and the I Have a Dream speech, or in my case, because I live in the South, I would hear about George Washington Carver and peanut butter. It's
Everybody heard.
incredible.
Now,
Yeah.
yeah. What did Chris Rock had a joke? He was like, anyway, go ahead. Talk more about how whack Black History Month was. No, mine could be whack too. It depends on who's doing it. My bad.
Yeah, that's okay. I just feel like so I was excited to try this, to learn something for myself. And once I started posting it, I realized right away that people were really into it. So the first one that I drew was Sojourner Truth, who is actually the first woman in the book. So I did it really late at night. I stay up late and I draw, and I thought, no, she's not the first one. She's the second one. I can start off Black History Month with, like, let's start with someone I've known about, but maybe I haven't researched their backstory. Because Sojourner Truth was a person I knew about as kind of an abolitionist and a women's rights name, but she was nothing to me more beyond a name. So I started drawing because I already had the character. I was like, you know, this will be fun. I really like drawing clothes, so I already have the model. Let me just draw some cool clothes on top of it. So it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just reading about this woman and the things that she went through to save her children from enslavement. You know, the shortest version of the story is she was promised her freedom. The Emancipation Proclamation was being rolled out all throughout the states. It happened in the North first, and then it rolled out through the South. And in order to capitalize on his properties, her slave owner sold her 5-year-old son to a plantation in Alabama, and she lived in upstate New York. And amazingly, like, if it's over 1,000 miles away, amazingly, she got him back. And I just don't even know how you you process something like that and you accomplish something like that. She was one of the first Black women in America to successfully file a lawsuit against a white man in America and win. And I was just crying my eyes out at like 4 o'clock in the morning on February 1st, 2017. And I knew that this was going to be kind of transformational for me. I never thought of myself as this kind of like really empathetic person. I'd never understood it in those terms before, but I really can get like, place my feet in their shoes and try to really feel like what they're feeling. I'm not a mother, but I can't imagine how it would feel. So I tried to imagine, and it was just so emotional. And so I tried to figure out ways to share those stories in these kind of bite-sized ways. And so I was really happy that people were excited about it. I could see, like I'm pretty good at judging the analytics on Instagram on seeing who's liking what and how many likes it's getting. And it was great because I was getting feedback back from other people like, yes, this is what we want. And fortunately, a few days in, I told my agent, about this, and I was like, do you think there's a potential for a book here? And she was like, yeah, I was going to ask you. And before February was over, I signed a 3-book deal at Little Brown Books for Young Readers. So, and then before the year was over, I wrote and illustrated this book, and by December it was out. So I had a really busy year that year. The following year, Little Dreamers, Visionary Women Around the World came out, and then the following year, I said, I'm tired of these books. I can't write and research another one of these books alone. Kwesi, will you join me and write one more book? And thankfully, you were there. Now, so the inspiration for this first book really came from this kind of Instagram project of like trying to teach myself about Black American women during Black History Month. There was an offer to publish in the UK. So there's a UK edition where we swapped out 7 Americans for 7 British women. So some of you guys may have seen this cover, and that's why it's a little bit different. The second book is about women artists and scientists. I really wanted to tackle the idea of creativity and challenge what creativity is and how it's seen. And so it's a mixture of women artists and scientists because Ada Lovelace suggested that in order to properly understand an idea, you have to approach it through multiple lenses, the artistic and the scientific. And then the third one I didn't, before the first one was published, the first question that people would ask me is, so when's the book for boys coming out? And and as exasperated as I was, I always say, this is a book for boys. There are stories that boys will be inspired by in this. But I hear you. I hear what you're actually asking for. They're saying, we want to see little Black boys represented in this way. And so as much as I didn't know if I could find like that kind of personal connection that I was seeing myself connect to these women's stories, I wasn't sure if I could pull that off in this book. It was definitely through the process of writing the second book that I learned a lot about myself and learned a lot about storytelling and empathy that I was able to connect to the story. But the thing that really inspired me to work on this book was talking to you, Kwesi. He's frozen on my end. Okay. Well, I don't know if he's talking. Yeah, I lost him. He talked to me one day about his son getting into an argument on the playground, and it encouraged me to start thinking about what it's like
Hey,
to
what's up? All
Hi,
right, I don't know. Hi. Sorry, something just cut out on my end.
that's
My bad.
okay.
What are we talking about?
Once told me a story about Zolani getting into a little argument on the playground. Um,
Hmm.
and that's one of the first conversations that made me inspired to work on this book about boys. Boys. Do you remember that story?
I do. A friend that was a girl in his class, and that girl got into an argument with another boy, and so Zoe goes up and like smushes him and pushes him down and gets in trouble. And I was like, Zoe, you can't. Did she ask you for any help? And he said no. And I was like, okay, well, you can't help her then. Like, unless she wants help, you can't just jump in. You're not Batman. So, and I said, that's, and of course I tell the story to Vashti. She said, I don't get it. What's the big deal? I was like, because that's not coming from necessarily a place of like, I want to protect my friend. It's coming from a place of toxic masculinity where it's like, I have to protect this girl. And then and what I had told you was like, it's just really hard to raise like a feminist boy because you have all this pressure from other spaces pushing against you. So you have like, how do you do that? And now, he's 10 now. So it's like, it's even more stuff that I have to do. So that was the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that
Mm.
was really mind-opening for me because I had never thought about what it's like to raise you said the words you said that I remember were what it's like to raise a boy from a feminist perspective. And I was like, whoa, I don't have kids. That's what people have to think about. Oh my God. Um,
That's
and
very
I
nice. Now
knew,
everybody thinks I'm a way better parent than I actually am. But anyway, go
no,
ahead.
I'm sure. Uh, so I bring that thought together with the fact that people are begging for this book that features black men and pictures of black boys. And I'm thinking about how, like, if I don't do it, if I say no, if I say I'm not the right one to tell this story, someone else is definitely going to do it. And there are plenty of incredible authors out there that would have done an incredible job and probably did do an incredible job with other books. I think you should absolutely be diversifying your bookshelf and make sure you're reading from other voices. But what I thought was really important was I thought so hard about the little things, the little choices that went into creating this book that I wanted to make sure that I did the same, that someone was going to do the same for little black boys. So to help that make sense, I want to kind of break down some of the things that went into creating Little Leaders. Um, because as I said before, like none of this is a mistake. Obviously I'm human and I make mistakes, but a lot of the all of the visual things in this book, all of the things that were written, the color choices, the texture, it's all intentional. And a lot of it was there to kind of combat some implicit biases that people have towards girls, black girls, and black women. And so knowing how much of my heart I put into making this book, I wanted to make sure that that went into this book, approaching the storytelling, telling the stories of black men for, specifically for young black boys from a feminist perspective. Um,
Hey, excuse me, Vash. Can I jump in real quick? Because
sure.
like a long time ago, there was a comment that said that the UK doesn't have as many black like role models and heroes and stuff, so that they have to use ours. And I hope the sister didn't, or brother, I don't know, person did not
Person.
sign off. Yeah, I'm sorry. But like you guys do, we had to create, we had to research that for the UK edition of this book, and it was really hard to find anybody because I think that history has been really hidden. But it was like me going online. Like, here's the trick. Here's how you research it when you don't know anybody. Were black people enslaved in that place at some point? Yes. Are they free now? Yes. Well, then there's got to be some black people who did something because white people did not free us out of the kindness of their, you know, of their hearts. So we did some digging. So I would suggest to the person, hopefully that person is still on. I want to say, I know it's not Stevenson. I, I'm messing up his name. I'm sorry. He did the
Oh, Paul
busboy.
Stevenson.
Paul
Paul,
Stevenson. Ah,
is that his
my
name?
man Paul Stevenson,
You
who did
guys,
the Bristol bus
yeah.
boycotts. This guy's amazing.
I,
He's an incredible, incredible guy.
I want to tell
And
you
so
guys
you can,
something. We forget who goes in the books all the time. So much, so much research. I just let it
Mhm.
all disappear for, and I slept for like 3 months after I finished the book. So don't judge me. I'm tired. Okay, so I want to. A lot of people ask, how did you choose the people that went into the book? So first I'll talk about little leaders, and then I'll ask Quest to talk about little legends. Oh, and then I just want to clarify, in the UK, well, in the US, this book is called Little Leaders. I tried to trademark Little Leaders. Someone has the trademark for Little Leaders, so I couldn't use Little Leaders anymore. And so that's why each one in America has a different name. Copyright and trademark laws are different in the UK, and so the entire series in the UK is called the Little Leaders series. So that's maybe why you'll see some, the different covers pop up. So that's just some backup here, backstory. So how did I choose the people that went into Little Leaders? This book, again, was inspired by my experience during Black History Month. So I was thinking about Black Americans and how I wanted to challenge this kind of stale, repetitive version of Black History Month. So I went and did some research on Black History Month. Turns out the important historian Carter G. Woodson founded Negro History Week in 1926, and the goal of his was to celebrate the stories that have been long neglected throughout history. And so I thought, this is perfect. I can study the stories of women whose stories have been doubly neglected throughout history. Um, and so I was thinking about, the people who I had come across through, college and art history, people who I would have been really inspiring for me to learn about when I was young. And so I started with names I was familiar with. And then once I knew that I'd gotten a book deal and this was going to be a book in the hands of children, introduction to Black history, it was important for me to, yes, definitely cover all of these diverse names who you don't get to hear about all too often, but also just in case this is their first chance, we've got to put Harriet Tubman, we've got to put like Rosa Parks in here. So there are a bunch of like big names, and then there are a lot of names that you may not have normally heard about. So it was kind of like a delicate balance of trying to figure out how I can share some kind of hidden figures essentially, and make sure that I was doing Black history justice, just in case this was someone's first introduction to it. The other big thing was I was thinking a lot about my younger self. What kinds of books would have been really helpful for me as like a shy Black girl growing up in Virginia, who really likes art and sits in the corner and draws all the time. What would have been really helpful for that kid and girls like her, or any other young person who maybe feels like a little bit isolated and doesn't know much about the world, which may be a lot of people. And I thought about this a lot in grad school. I started making movies when I was about in my third year of college, and then I went to grad school something years old, 20 or 21. And I always thought about, what if someone had taught me about filmmaking when I was like 10? I always, like, when I was in Cal Arts, I got the opportunity to do community arts partnerships. And so I was teaching filmmaking to high school kids. And I thought, wow, how cool that these kids get to learn filmmaking in high school. If only I had something like that. So it was very like kind of in the forefront of my thinking of, you know, what would have happened if I had learned that years earlier. So, um, and that really ties into like how, you know, in America, people are, you know, pretty obsessed with, you know, working and what we do for work. And you start asking kids so early on, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't want any kid to have to know too soon. And I don't really want them to have to think about it. But I also know that they're going to get asked. And so I kind of wanted to arm them with the knowledge of all of these different people and all these different opportunities and all of these different ways that Black women can be and can exist. And so that's why there's, you know, I try to cover as many different fields of study and career paths as possible. And I tried to focus on, you know, who did it first or who made a big impact on the field and who can't we miss when we talk about, you know, tennis, or who can't we miss when we talk about um, gymnastics or something like that. Obviously, there were so many activists I could cover and so many athletes I could cover, but you know, Black history often gets boiled down to activism, and I really just don't want that to boggle like burden kids. You know, it's a lot, and you know, clearly it didn't inspire me. It didn't excite me about history when I was little. Thinking about, you know, I was a shy kid who liked to sit in the corner and draw. But if I had known about Julie Dash making movies with like women in beautiful dresses walking down the beach, I might have seen myself. I might have seen, you know, a possibility for myself so much earlier on. And so that's why, you know, I tried to cover as many different versions of being as possible. So that's one part of that. So, Quest, do you want to talk about how we took that thinking into Little Legends?
Um, yeah, sure. Do I remember how we? Oh, I think I mean, for me, I think it was like, well, what are these? So I've worked in education for like 18 years now, and when you're a Black male teacher, you're going to be assigned the Black male boys. And when you're with the Black male
Oops,
boys, you kind of see. What's that? Oh,
sorry.
when you're with the Black male boys, you see a lot of, you know, actions that you're like, man, I wish there's something we could do. I wish you knew about this person, and you try to introduce them to people. And I think the hard part is honoring an idea of masculinity that they might have, and not being like, this is a terrible thing, but like looking for people who sort of twisted it in a way. So like the example I always go for is Bass Reeves, where it's like he's a cowboy, he's a lawman, he's the most successful lawman in American history, and he got into like 4 gunfights. Like he was like, I never want to like use my gun. I'm going to use my intelligence. I'm going to trick them, which is also like really in keeping with African American tradition and African
Yeah.
traditions. Hey, my guy,
And
Brett
he is
Bass,
so fun to draw. He's so cute.
right? I was like, Bass, you got to get Bass because he's got this great mustache. You're going to love it. Um, so I think it was picking people like Bass Reeves and then picking people who had different presentations of masculinity, like, you know, like Prince
Mm-hmm.
or Andre Talley or Arthur, not Arthur Ashe, Alvin Ailey, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and balancing that out, balancing out the scientists and the athletes, and even the athlete, like we did Bill Russell. Why did we do Bill Russell? Because his greatest achievement, the way that he became a champion, was because he was the best teammate ever. He wasn't like the most dominating player. He wasn't somebody, you know, everybody's watching The Last Dance. Oh man, such a great Bill Russell picture.
But he was a good
Everybody's watching The Last
listener.
Dance.
He listened to his teammates. He watched. He wasn't like, I'm sure
Mhm.
obviously everybody wants to try their best, but he understood that improving his skills could also go hand in hand with being a good teammate. Oh, look, my mom is
Mhm.
on here, but she said she's frozen.
Oh man, that's rough. Um, so yeah, I mean that's how I mean there are certainly people in there that I was like, man, we got to like people. We need to know. People should know who Dwayne McDuffie is,
Also,
right?
yes, also because Quest is a diehard Boston fan.
I listen. I think Bill Russell's record speaks for itself. Okay, 11 championships in 13 years of playing. So, you know, it wasn't like I picked, Paul Pierce or somebody like that. That would be terrible.
I don't know what that means.
Nah, three stripes every day. Thank you, Ja. That's my guy, Ja. Three stripes reps Boston because we wear Adidas. The fun part about making this side note was Vashti becoming a sports fan. And as soon as this quarantine's over, we're going to go to New York and we're going to go take in a Knicks game.